Hello and welcome to my podcast. Do me a favor, subscribe to the John Keim Report wherever you get your podcast. You're watching on YouTube, you know the deal. Like button, subscribe button. You can find us there as part of Empire Media, AMPIRE. As you can see, I'm joined by my pal, Nikki Jhabvala of the Washington Post, as we are wrapping up the NFL owners meetings where the news you wanted to happen did not happen. So, Nikki, before we get going, we talked to Ron Rivera today. We heard Roger Goodell's press conference here in this room right behind me. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see it. If you listen to the podcast, it's a big room with chairs. It's where the press conference, like in a hotel, right? Yeah. So anyway, Goodell talked. He addressed the commander situation, the Mary Jo White investigation. We'll get into a little bit of that. And there's also been some news about the up sale, I guess. So first of all, big takeaway from these owners' meetings.
Are we talking on field or off field first?
From
anything. Yeah. I mean, this franchise was a headliner. It was going in and it was as expected. We obviously didn't get the news that, and it wasn't expected that we would. It's just too soon. But it seems like there's some progress and, we'll see where it goes from here as far as the bids. It doesn't sound like there was much discussion, if at all. There was briefings, as Roger Goodell put it, just updating membership, which means the other owners on, that the process is ongoing along with Mary Jo White investigation. And we'll see where it leads. It could be May, it could be longer, who knows?
That was the big thing on Monday night. Today's Tuesday. Tuesday. So Monday night, Jim Irsay basically said, hey, this could go into the fall. And then you have Bob Kraft saying, hey, it could be soon.
Yeah.
But the one, the fall is just because in Irsay's mind, I guess reality, if this goes into May before an owner is announced, how soon can the league go from point A to point B to get that vote to be approved? Because there's background checks you have to do.
Absolutely. No, and that's going to take some time. I think the more people that are involved in a group, it's reasonable to think that it could take even more time. You look at the Broncos situation, which was the last franchise to go through the sale process. That was a group, but it had significant liquidity with the wealth of the Walton Penner Group. So we'll see how this one plays out. There's just so much uncertainty, and a lot of things are very quiet right now. And that's the nature of these deals anyway. But especially one sort of like this, which is a unique circumstance given all the, I guess, noise kind of around the team.
Right. And, I think as someone else pointed out, the NFL is going to want to get this done fast as they can. But it's still, you can't just.
Right. Just because they want to doesn't mean it will, So, but yeah, it's going to take some time. But yeah, I do think all signs here indicated that it should happen. Yeah. We'll see. No guarantees.
Right. And no guarantees. And I think we've both been very cautious on this. And it could, something like this could happen in a couple of weeks. It could be
an agreement could possibly.
An agreement could be reached, right? Not a full sale, but an agreement could be reached in a couple of weeks.
Sure.
We don't know. And I think that's the frustrating part about this for anybody listening is you don't really know. And it's hard to fully get answers because there's a lot of factors and people involved who don't want this stuff out there.
Right. It's a very sensitive matter. There are a lot of other things that have a ripple effect. I mean, you think about the Mary Jo White investigation, there are, other issues sort of complicating it. So, while they could be, like we said, sort of an agreement or an accepted bid by current Commanders ownership, it doesn't necessarily mean it's completely over. It's certainly likely, but the NFL still has to approve it. And by doing that, they need 3/4 of owners to approve.
And we do know that there have been at least 2 official bids submitted.
Right.
And now we also know that 3 groups have toured the facility.
Right.
And you cannot tour the facility unless you've been vetted by Bank of America. So, that doesn't mean there's an official bid. I don't, but it's all, and I don't know, these bids weren't necessarily thrown in today. It's not like it was on today. So how big a step or piece to add to the puzzle are these?
Yeah, and I think that's an important thing to keep in mind is just because it was reported today doesn't mean it happened at that moment. But even getting to that process, I think, is an important step. But it is it is important to keep it into context too. There was formal bids that were submitted, not the final agreements. This is just another step in the process, and it's significant, but not, this is it moment, so.
And there's still a mystery person out there.
Yeah.
So, and I think it's a rather wealthy mystery person, but these are billionaires. So they're all kind of really wealthy, but we don't know who it is. And so that's also part of the situation. It's why it's really hard to, I don't like to go around handicapping this race because of that. There's a lot that we don't know.
Right. And it may not be over until the very end too. Like, especially if, another bidder comes in and, tops a bid at the last minute, you never know. So
who could that bidder be?
I have no idea.
We're not going to go down that road because nothing has happened down that road at this point. Let's get to on the field. All right. Because I think we just spent 10 minutes saying we don't know what's going to happen or when, but we're being honest
Insider.
with you. Right. Yeah, exactly. Hashtag insider, but we're being honest at least about it. So there you go.
I mean, the league doesn't even have all the details. You hear them when they talk. Right. It's tight,
Right. Yeah. And I always point out that Dan Snyder brought Joe Gibbs back without anybody knowing.
Correct.
He hired Ron Rivera. Nobody knew until near the very end that was the guy. So let's go to on the field. And the big thing today was it's always quarterback. So what was your takeaway from Ron Rivera's presser Tuesday morning?
Yeah, I'd say the first thing is obviously they wanted to keep the cost of the quarterback room at a minimal. And that is part, not the only, but part of the reason they've really been pushing Sam Howell and think he has a really strong chance. Brought in Jacoby Brissett, obviously, to compete for the job. Now, they didn't rule out drafting a quarterback even in the first round. Is it likely? You never know. But
did that part surprise you? Did you think they would rule it out?
Well, it's interesting because Martin Mayhew talked on Monday, and I remember asking him, do you expect Sam Howell and Jacoby Brissett to be your top two quarterbacks going into camp? And Ron said he hasn't ruled out drafting a quarterback in the first round, which, we're splitting hairs here, but, you would think a first round quarterback would be, given the financial investment, would automatically jump to the top of the line, but, he would have to earn the job. Right.
And the only quarterback that I would think you'd say you can wait a little bit on would be Anthony Richardson, because he's considered so raw that would you take and I mean, to me, he's got a lot of room to grow. And there's one game he looks like a superstar, and one game is like, oh my God.
Right.
But there's still the talent there. So that's one where I could say, all right, well, you do that, you could, but otherwise.
But and still the financial investment, I mean, that factored in, no doubt, with Carson Wentz and Ryan Fitzpatrick. They would say competition, and it was still, well, one's making 10 million, one's making 1 million, but there will be some sort of competition, and Sam Howell will be in the thick of it.
Do you think the addition of Brissett makes it a stronger competition?
Yes, I think he will push him. But I like Martin said, like Ron has said multiple times, I think they really want to see Sam Howell succeed because he's got, there's a longer future there. Jacoby signed on a 1-year deal. They could always resign him, but you look at it on paper, there's more potential there for Sam Howell.
The adventure park is ziplining through the trees. It's climbing from platform to platform. It's even an axe throwing competition with your friends. But what the adventure park really is opportunity. Reconnecting with friends and family, accomplishing a challenge, and making lasting memories. So book your visit today and choose your own adventure.
The other phrase that we've heard a lot this offseason is roster building. And that's part of this. And, it ties into Lamar Jackson. And I know everybody still wants to know about him, which never was going to happen because of that phrase, roster building. There's a lot, and that goes a lot with it. What have you thought about that aspect? Because I think we've heard it more. You always want to build your roster. It feels like the phrase has been a bigger emphasis this offseason.
Yeah, which is interesting because I think they've spent the last 3 years kind of building that roster. You look at, they completely overhauled it almost, and re-signed the guys that, I remember Ron Rivera at his first combine talking about finding those core players, and it's very clear he's found at least some of them, maybe not all of them, but the guys he's re-signed, Terry, Jonathan Allen, Deron Payne now. And we'll see where that leads. He really likes the safeties and the younger DBs they've drafted. So they got a good foundation. So I think, it's starting to become more noticeable what that rebuild looks like, but it's been going on for years. So
And I think in terms of roster build, then it's like, because it is funny because last year they were ultra aggressive going after quarterbacks, and it was the quarterback was going to be that, hey, final piece almost.
Right.
And this year it's like, well, you have a young quarterback that they do like. I think that's a definite part of the equation. They do like him. And when, we had these little one-on-ones with Rivera, and you guys saw me talking to him, and he gets up and he's demonstrating footwork that Howell does and where he's improved with his footwork. So there is a definite level of excitement or cautious optimism about him.
Right. Yeah, no, absolutely. I think the key for them, as well as Sam and anybody watching, is, how quickly can he acclimate to this new scheme, whatever it's going to be with the enemy, which you assume is, what Kansas City ran, but you got to picture it without Pat Mahomes under center, which is not always the same. So, and it's a very different system, and it's West Coast usually it's very different, like even terminology wise, flipping numbers and letters. Their play calls are very long. It's typically very hard for young quarterbacks to learn, and to go from a different coordinator in consecutive years could be tough. So how quickly can he adapt? Can he lead a lot of the veteran guys? We'll see. They do have a lot of pieces in place though, which can only help, you would think.
You would think, and I think being in his second year will help. You would think expedite that process, and he's at least some experience going through a season, not necessarily always playing only 19 passes, but going through it. You would think that would help him maybe learn and understand what you have to do to learn that.
Right. And the key, I think, is, can you protect him? Can he acclimate to it? And if there are going to be issues, and there will be hiccups along the way, can he keep his confidence? I mean, I think you see so often where, things start to snowball, and especially with a young guy really trying to get his feet under him in a new system, that, if things go awry and stay that way, it's hard to get them back. So if they can keep some consistency, especially on offense, protect him, always get that run game going. That was for Chris Russell.
Yeah, shout out Russell. But the other thing is going back to, because this is kind of your confidence line ties into, if you drafted a quarterback in the first round, doesn't exactly do wonders for that, which is why I think it would, if you're leaving over the possibility, what if like a CJ Stroud or Bryce Young falls to 16?
Right.
I don't know that you're going to go for Will Levis or even Richardson, but how would, what would you think of that? Because what would that would say that you like them, but are you sold?
Right. But on the flip side of that, if he can't handle that kind of pressure, is he built to win and succeed in the league?
That's the other point.
Yeah.
I mean, here's the other thing is, this franchise hasn't had a great quarterback in a long time. You don't stop looking until you got that guy.
Yeah. And everybody has a different strategy, right? But that's how I feel. If there's a guy you like, you go get him. Until you find that guy, you keep searching.
And I will say, I do like Howell. I mean, I think. Yeah,
no, I think he has a lot of great qualities, and I think they really like what he did at Carolina, a fine institution, when they lost a lot of playmakers in his final season there, and how he really kept the team together, how he adapted to their circumstances. I think that really impressed everybody in Washington. But, jumping from that, it's not always translatable to the pros. It's a completely different game, it's different circumstances. Ron
also talked about why they feel good about him too. It's not just, oh, he threw 19 passes, looked really good. It was because one thing you have to always remember, it's like whenever there's a quarterback change, if the guy gets benched, it's what they see, not just on Sundays, it's what they see Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and in practice and all that. And I think one of the reasons they're excited about Howell is because of what they've seen in practice and other.
Right. I mean, he got more reps later in the season. When Carson Wentz went down, Sam Howell became the number 2. So he got more reps. When you're the third string, you're not getting really anything in practice. You're getting those mental reps or whatever they call them. But second string, you're starting to get more. And I think they could really gauge his progress there.
Then also Lamar Jackson. And people who listen to this know that was never going to happen, but they kind of laid out a little bit more as to why. And I think we've all known that, but he explained it publicly as to why. And,
Yeah, I mean, they want to continue to sign their own and have a, relatively minimal cap charge at the quarterback position, and at some point, hopefully they find that guy and you will have to pay. But right now they want to build around him, and had they gone after Lamar Jackson, they wouldn't have Daron Payne. And, there are arguments. Yeah. And there are arguments either ways, but, it is, especially if we're talking, fully guaranteed contract, as it's been reported that he, Lamar Jackson is seeking. That's a lot. And now that he's been tagged, it would cost him an additional 2 first-round picks to even get him. So
and there's nobody has the appetite to do a Deshaun Watson deal. So like if you, the other point that people would make is if you give them like 3 years fully guaranteed 145, 150 million, Baltimore's going to probably match it. They're not going to lose them to this team.
Right. No. And yes, every NFL team owner is well off. But they are not all the same. Not every team has the same cash flow. And I think that's just always something you got to consider.
And then he did say, well, what someone asked, well, what if a new owner wants to do that? Then it's like, then you consider your options. But I don't know. But what you're doing then is you are going to have to make some severe cuts.
Right.
Because, so I don't know that even if if Josh Harris or whomever comes in, just not thrown out for any reason, but if Josh Harris comes in, I'm saying it because like it's Steve Apostolopoulos.
Yes.
Got it. Steve Apostolopoulos. That's how you pronounce it there, young lady. It's I have practiced so many times and it's still, you have to slow down. But I did get the name down right because it is Steve. So there you go. But let's say whoever comes in and says, we want to go get this guy. Right. I think then the staff and whomever say that's great, but here's what we have to do. Then do you want to try and go get him, and would Baltimore do it? But he did say,
right. And I think the other thing is you gotta look 1, 2, 3 years down the line too. It's not just this season. It's not even next season. It's, you got to think about Chase Young's 5th year. You got to think Cam Curl, Montez Sweat. Like, how are you continuing to build this roster down the line, and either keeping or making these tough decisions on your own players? How will it impact those? So, tough decision, but you got to make them. Let's get to the exciting stuff. Left guard. Oh boy. No, but where were some of the other? And by the way, at left guard, he said Sadiq Charles, Chris Paul. Asked about Andrew Norwell. It's like, it's basically like, well, we're still evaluating and we'll see after the draft. That's not a good sign for Andrew Norwell, but not terribly surprising. No, it's not surprising at all. But, and I don't think they're done. Do you think they're done addressing the line? I mean, not at all. I hope not. They can't be. For their sake. Yeah. It didn't sound too promising on Chase really, but we will see. I would expect I would think, I don't know this for sure, but, just given, what they've been looking at ahead of the draft and their needs going into the draft, that would be a reasonable position to see additions. I am fully expecting that there because that has been a heavy emphasis. Yes. And the other thing that you would hear is that I think they do like their corners. You can get another corner. This is a deep corner class too. So if you want a corner, you don't necessarily have to get one at 16. Martin Mayhew, we asked him about the tight ends for you my tight end groupies out there. And he even said, they like their young tight ends. Yeah. But I would say, like, if you're not gonna rule out a quarterback, you're not gonna rule out any position. Right. No, exactly. I mean, they have needs across the board. They're not always starting positions, but they need depth across the board. So, but I would not rule out anything. And then any other takeaways that just jump out at you from, or even like what some other coaches said, either about the Commanders or anything like that. By the way, we both talked to Andy Reid. He loves Eric Bieniemy. Yeah, no, everybody's kind of raved about Eric Bieniemy. I think it's going to be really interesting to see how that kind of plays out. I talked to Ron briefly about Tavita Pritchard, who's, one of the lesser known assistants they hired to be the quarterback's coach, which I think is an incredibly important position on any team, but especially in their situation with Sam Howell, a young guy, transitioning to a new system, and, he's got a lot on his shoulders, that kid. So it'll be paramount that they have a teacher who can really get through to him. So and he seems to have a knack for knowing how to develop relationships. Yes. Which is huge. Right. So, I mean, it's going to be interesting this year. Trying to think of what else was terribly notable
don't know that there was a whole lot else notable from that. Did the meetings go as you expected? Because we knew going in that there was not going to be a sale. The only thing you ever say is, well, you never know with Dan.
Right,
Short of
exactly.
that, you knew that wasn't going to be. So
It went about as expected. Very little details about the process. I actually thought we got more news with confirmation of the bids.
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens.
There you go. That's it from the desert. I am going to be staying here for a few more hours because my flight keeps getting delayed. My red-eye flight from 11:50 is now 2:30 in the morning.
8:30 flight.
Probably will. Anyway, thanks to Nikki for joining me. Thanks to you for watching/listening. I'll be back with another podcast, I guess, later this week, Thursday, Friday, whatever it is. Talk to you next time.